Find things beautiful as much as you can. Most people find too little beautiful. Vincent Van Gogh. Hello and welcome to Peace, Love, and Robots. It's a podcast. It's dedicated to everything and anything and all that is in between. And I'm Jeremy. Yeah, I'm the guy behind the mic. I'm the host. And this is season number 2, episode number 4 for September 29th, 2021. All right, I might seem like I've been shot out of a cannon. It's because I'm excited this week. I'm excited for today, tonight, finally. All Elite Wrestling is coming here live to Rochester, New York. This show was first postponed because of COVID. Thank you. Back in March of 2020, we were unfortunately unable to witness the debut of one Brody Lee, and sadly he will not be with us, or he is not with us for their debut in Rochester, but we'll do him proud. It was postponed till June of this year, and then postponed again to September 29th, and the guys are here, so I'm sure the show is going to happen here in Rochester, and I'm very, very excited about it. As always, this podcast is brought to you by the ads you hear at the beginning and the end of the show. So if you listen all the way to the end, I'll forever be in your debt. Let's get going. That was very abrupt. Do you have a favorite fine artist? I do. It's not all that unusual for this particular artist to be someone's favorite, considering his work has been reprinted and repurposed in a variety of ways for decades. You've seen posters, there's t-shirts, my wife and I have masks of one of his pieces of work, so it's everywhere, but my favorite fine artist is Vincent Van Gogh. I can't pinpoint the exact moment that I fell in love with the work of Van Gogh. I just remember being aware of him as that guy who cut off his ear when I was younger. In high school, I read an interesting account of his early life as a missionary prior to his work as an artist. Now, that story about a man who didn't fit the mold of the typical preacher impacted me for years to come. The idea of the unusual missionary, one willing to get their hands dirty in order to reach the lost, just meant a lot to me as a young man. But his art, though, I didn't really look at his work until I was a year away from dropping out of college. Well, a year out of it. I'd flip through the coffee table books that bookstores like Barnes & Noble or Borders would sell, admiring his use of texture, color, the way it seemed he attacked the canvas with a reckless abandon, not concerned with precision, but primarily with just getting the image out there for the world to see. Van Gogh's obvious struggle with mental illness was also a draw for me, someone who spent a lot of years denying his own battle with depression and anxiety, shoving it aside because nobody really cared. Or so I thought. Van Gogh is an interesting study in the human condition. Someone who is undeniably talented and creative, but yet blind to the value that he was to the world, or how valuable he was to the world, not knowing just how important he would become. Van Gogh killed himself when he was just 37 years old. I've seen a few of his paintings in person. The ones that moved me the most were both self-portraits. The first was in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. That's the National Art Museum. And it was years ago. My youngest son was just a baby. He's now 13. And my oldest was in elementary school. It was a hot, sweaty June day. The temperature was easily in the mid-90s, and we had already had our fill of as much of the museums as possible. But we had yet to visit the American Art Museum at that point, and nobody was really up for another tour. I think everybody was done by then except for me. And my wife, who enjoys art but is not devoted to it, elected to wait with the boys, eating some sort of snack and drinking some water while I rushed upstairs to the Impressionism exhibit. I made a beeline for the Van Gogh and stood, staring into the eyes of a man who had been dead over a century. You could see his fingerprints in the oils. And I cried. I did the same thing years later when I visited the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. There I was, surrounded by the work of Manet, Monet, Picasso, all of these beautiful pieces, and in the middle of the room was a small glass case, and inside of it, a small self-portrait of Van Gogh. And I stared at it, trying to really see the man who painted it. Someday I hope to visit the Museum of Modern Art, where The Starry Night is on display. That's also in New York City. All that being said, I was able to experience something very cool this past weekend. I was able to go to Beyond Van Gogh, the immersive experience. It was incredible. Using a mixture of animation, music, projection tricks, Beyond Van Gogh is a way to experience the art of Vincent Van Gogh. Beyond Van Gogh is a way to experience the artwork of Vincent Van Gogh in a way never done before. So there I stood, in the middle of this giant tent, surrounded first by multiple portraits and then surrounded by animated falling leaves, all in the trademark style of Vincent Van Gogh. Music was playing. I believe it was a playlist including the score to the movie Loving Vincent, including an instrumental version of Don McLean's Vincent. If you haven't heard either of those songs or watched that movie, really, really seek it out. It's incredible. I'd watch as brush strokes would slowly form the swirls and the kinetic motion of The Starry Night, and then the quiet, inviting atmosphere of Cafe Terrace at night. But all the while, I couldn't help but think of the tragic end of Van Gogh's life, wishing he just knew how important he would turn out to be, and how important he was. There was this episode of Doctor Who a few years ago. I wouldn't say I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. They call themselves Whovians. I just can't bring myself to calling myself that. But I've enjoyed a number of episodes, and the Fourth Doctor from back in the 70s and 80s, Tom Baker, will always be my favorite iteration of that character. But I don't remember what Doctor this was, but there was an episode where the Doctor and his companion ended up interacting with Van Gogh himself for the entirety of the episode. The best moment was when, towards the end, the Doctor brought Vincent into the future, our time, where there was an exhibit of his work. It wasn't just an exhibit. It was a celebration of him. Vincent stood among people who loved him, admired him, and was moved to tears. He was loved, and he finally knew it. Of course, the Doctor couldn't change the past, and Vincent still killed himself, but the power of that moment was in the fact that he slowly realized just how important he was to people. And I think that's what people struggling with depression just don't know. They don't know that they are loved. They don't know just how important they are to the world they live in. They probably don't know because they don't hear it enough. As we wrap up September, which is also National Suicide Prevention Month, I felt the need to say, there might be a Van Gogh among you. You yourself might be a Van Gogh. You may be struggling with a kind of madness that words can't quite sum up. But please, if you're in that place, talk to someone. Call me if you don't have anybody else. Of course, you can also reach out to the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. And don't forget the most important thing. The world is better with you in it. All right, I've said enough. It was a heavy one. How are you feeling? Let me know by sending me an email at peaceloveandrobotspod@gmail.com. That's Peace, Love, and Robots Pod, all one word, at gmail.com. Or leave me a voicemail at 585-371-8986. I'd love to hear from you. Peace, love, and robots. If Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.